Welcome to the Brunch and Bet Show. Guys, it's the second leg of the American Triple Crown, the Preakness Stakes, and it goes this Saturday, May 15th. It's a mile and 3/16 on the dirt at Pimlico Racetrack in Baltimore. Now, the Preakness always draws huge attention every year as all eyes are on the Derby winner to see if they can repeat and keep themselves eligible for that elusive Triple Crown. And this year, all eyes and binoculars and magnifying glasses are certainly on the Kentucky Derby winner Medina Spirit and his trainer Bob Baffert after the horse tested positive for betamethasone after the Kentucky Derby. The Preakness is now embroiled in controversy. We're going to get to that, break it down for you so you understand what's going on, but touch on the other storylines because there's a lot going on in Saturday's race, and I can't wait to get to all of it. And I am joined by a wonderful group today who's going to help you guys get right up to speed. Jason Portuondo, where are you calling from? And introduce yourself.
From the GTA. So I should be talking racing from Woodbine. Unfortunately, as part of this lockdown, we have yet to open the latch, spring the gates on the 2021 season. It will happen sooner than later. But for now, happy to just hanging out with you guys.
Well, we're always happy you're here. And we've got Megan joining us today. Megan, how are you?
Great. And I am also from the lockdown in Toronto. I run a hockey analytics company, so big on data, big on betting. I'm excited about this race because I think it's a very good race to bet on for beginners. And I also think with all the eyes on of the sports world, it'll be awesome to see it run.
And we were thrilled to catch Dan before he heads off to the Preakness Stakes. You lucky man. Where are you calling from? And introduce yourself to those that don't know you.
I'm calling from New York, and just when I thought I had turned the page on the New York Rangers season, of course, Megan appears all the trauma that was this past season. But yeah, I'm from Queens, New York. I'm rocking the Maryland colors, of course. I'm excited to be headed down to Baltimore for the Preakness for America's Best Racing. We're actually going to be having a live show on Saturday at 4:30 Eastern, live from the Preakness. Check that out on America's Best Racing's channels. But yeah, I'm essentially one of the content guys and one of the people also behind the scenes as well, doing a bunch of different things with America's Best Racing.
And Dan is going to get you guys up to speed on all things wagering because he's such a pro and he's so good at it. But before we get to wagering, Jason, I want to get to you first and just have you explain what went down with Medina Spirit. I mean, Bob Baffert, whether you follow racing or not, this has been all over the news. And I think for people, it's hard to kind of make heads or tails. How serious of an accusation is this? What happens? What's the fallout been? And what still needs to happen? So I'm hoping you can kind of break that down for us.
Well, first of all, Bob Baffert, probably the most recognizable figure in racing, right? And he's got his detractors. I get it. I understand. But so after the Derby, all horses get tested. His test came up positive for that substance you mentioned, a betamethasone. It was actually inside an ointment, a topical cream that was used by Medina Spirit, apparently. And a lot of this is alleged, so we have to watch the way we word things. But, you know, it's therapeutical, right? So it's therapeutic medication that a lot of horses use, whether it be thoroughbred and or standardbred. Now, depending on the jurisdiction, it has to be at a zero tolerancy, or in this case for Kentucky, you're allowed to, but he was fractionally over the allowed amount. So is it something that's going to help the horse be better? In my opinion, no, it's not a performance enhancing drug, but the rules are the rules. And for Bob Baffert, not exactly a guy with a squeaky clean record. I mean, you go back to the most recent Triple Crown winner, Justify in 2018. That horse tested positive after winning the Santa Anita Derby ahead of the Kentucky Derby. He got through that. You go back to last year, as early as that. I mean, Gamine, Charlatan, both testing positive in Arkansas. Gamine, I do believe, tested positive again after that. So we understand why some people, you know, have their theories and, you know, detract when it comes to the Silver Fox, as they call him, Bob Baffert. But the bottom line is this. He's still allowed to race Medina Spirit because, and here's the irony, a lot of athletes will say, well, you know, I didn't know that was in there. I believe this athlete. He had no idea what was in the ointment cream that he was getting put on his foot. But a lot of athletes, you know, they don't realize that certain substances are banned that are in the, maybe aspirin or whatever cold medication they're taking. So it happens, right? But there'd be too much litigation wrapped up into this if they were to say, Bob, you cannot race. Your horse is not allowed to be here. So the horse is allowed to race. Bob has been, very honest in terms of saying, you know what, you guys can do whatever you want with my horse, monitor him, test him pre-race to make sure that everything is out of his system. So Bob, is playing by the rules, so to speak. And again, some will say, well, it's a little too late for that. I get it. I'm nor here nor there when it comes to this situation. I'm just sort of telling the facts as it is. So that's why he's able to race. There's something called a split sample. The next sample now, if it comes back negative, then all of this basically is a non-story. We move on. It comes back positive, all of a sudden now it puts a completely different spin on the projection of this story, because now we're going to have the positive test. You're going to have the horse get perhaps the Kentucky Derby taken away. Mandaloon becomes the winner. What a way that would be for Brad Cox to get his first ever Kentucky Derby. And then, of course, it goes to court. And there's going to be years and years and years that this thing will take before it's actually decided. I will say this, though, Brodie. 1968, Dancer's Image, last time something like this happened, and it took 4 years before the court decided that fate. So this is long from over. I'm hoping it's just negative so we can move on. As much as we want to have a clean sport, let's clean things up. Let's just hope it's negative. But that's where we stand. So, yeah, certainly no lack of storylines going into this year's Preakness.
No, not at all. And I think you touched on this beautifully, but the thing that I think we need to emphasize here is that betamethasone is a therapeutic treatment, right? Which you mentioned. Right. And it is allowed. It's just you have this 14-day withdrawal period for it to leave the horse's body. So that wasn't really there. And the other thing I want to know, why does it take 2, 3, 4 weeks to get the results of this split test? Like, what can they not just call someone and get the result? This is confusing to me.
You would think it'd be that quick. Hopefully we get an answer sooner than later. I mean, thank God they have the old AB, the old split test, because if we didn't, then, geez, now we're really in a conundrum, so to speak. So at least Bob says, you know what, we've got the split sample, so we can find out if the first one was just, analyzed wrongly, which I guess is possible. But this will give us a more definitive answer. So we're going to find out. End of the day, for me, I don't think the horse won because of this cream. To me, again, it's not a performance-enhancing drug, but the bottom line is this. Rules are rules. He did go over the limit. You got to play by the rules, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Megan, I know, you work in sports, you work with the MLB, you work in hockey, and things like this come up all the time. So from your perspective and just following the sports news this week, I mean, you never want any sport to be overshadowed by a story like this one, but what's your take then on this?
And I've been actually watching it all week because I think it is such compelling news for the sporting community. And I will add too, like Bob Baffert, not only is he dressed like a winner, but he actually has already 7 Preakness wins, 6 of which are Derby winners. So to see 2 of his horses in this race, highly favored is not surprising. With that said, of course, there's been asterisks in the MLB with like the Barry Bonds, Mark McGuire. You see even a Canadian snowboarder at the Olympics for non-performance enhancing got their medal taken away. So this is not new in the sporting community where there's a race literally against one side, which is like the regulation, trying to track down and make sure that they monitor what's going on with performance enhancing and making it fair. And then you have everyone else trying to maximize within the rules of what they can do. And of course, the horse is innocent. They can't speak for themselves, but it would be nice to know exactly what was going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, we'll certainly find out in the next little bit here, however long this test takes to get in. Let's move on from this because there's so many great other storylines we want to focus on here. And I want to go to Dan now to talk about your favorite storylines. I mean, you are so lucky to be going to this race. I got to follow you on Instagram and watch the whole thing. What are you following, Dan? Who's got a compelling story you're loving?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things here. You've got, as in most years, you have a couple of the returning horses from the Derby, but you also have what they call the new shooters, the horses that were not in the Derby and who are now going to take their shot at the Derby winner. And so for me, in terms of the new ones, excuse me, one who's interesting is Ram, who's down on the rail. And I don't think he's got much of a shot to win, but the reason Ram is interesting is because he's trained by a gentleman named Dwayne Lucas, who is 85 years old. He's a Hall of Famer. He's had 45 runners over the years in the Preakness, and he won his first Preakness back in 1980 with a horse named Codex, and he most recently won the Preakness back in 2013 with a horse named Oxbow. And so, to have a trainer who's just been in the game for so long reappear with really a late emerging horse who was not on many people's radar not too long ago in Ram, I think that's going to be one of the main storylines. Can that horse get a share? And, again, think about 85 years old. I'm slightly less than half that age, and I'm afraid to get on top of a horse. I could not imagine what it's like to be around horses all day. And, and I believe he still gets on his horses as well. And so, I think that for me is a super interesting story. You've got a few others here, in terms of the returning ones. I think Midnight Bourbon is one to keep an eye on. He didn't get out of the gate well in the Derby, still ran a really honorable race to finish sixth. But what happens now if he gets out of the gate cleanly and has an opportunity to challenge Medina Spirit early? I think that's something we got to look at.
Oh, I love that you brought that horse up. Megan and I, little precursor, Megan and I are hot on that horse, let me tell you. Jason, what about you? What storylines have you been following this week?
Well, very similar to Torch. I really feel like, you get the horses back from the Derby, that's cool. But then you have the horses that have been, sitting patiently on the sideline, just, waiting for their ship to come, hop over the boards and get on the ice and go after that puck. And Concert Tour is one of those horses because, he's the other Baffert horse, right? Everybody's talking about Medina Spirit, and I get it. And by the way, this whole, betamethasone situation, if it's not Bob Baffert, it's completely different, right? But because it is Baffert, that's why it's being examined so much. But Baffert's other horse in here, Concert Tour, not sure what happened in that last race, the Arkansas Derby. It was a stinker in terms of what he's capable of doing. It wasn't horrible, but we expected a lot more on that occasion. He's going to be kind of lurking in the weeds. I don't know if he goes to the front. Mike Smith is aboard. That's all you need to know. And, he's 85. Speaking of Dwayne Lucas, Mike Smith is 80-odd years old, too, it feels like. And still getting it done in the big races, getting it done. So that's impressive. But for me, I want to keep an eye on that other Baffert horse because we see that so much in racing where a trainer's got a couple of horses, and it's the one that's talked about that gets all the attention, all the action at the windows, but the other one steps up. So Concert Tour, anybody can have an off day. It wasn't horrible by any stretch of the imagination, but I want to see if the real Concert Tour is going to stand up and perhaps deliver on Saturday.
I also love that name, Concert Tour. I just had to add that in there.
Yeah.
Megan, have you been able to find a storyline other than this one with Medina Spirit that you've been following this week, or is that really what's captured your attention as the Preakness approaches?
Yeah, and I think in the sporting world in general, that's just all the attention in terms of what's going on. But I would say Concert Tour for sure, because you want to see if Baffert gets his 8 win. And so 1 or 2 of those would be really interesting to see how they race. As well, I was doing some research. So I'm a data scientist in residence, but putting on my fun hat with racing, I actually do sometimes choose on names. So love Midnight Bourbon, Kentucky Horse, and I think with all of the controversy in Louisville, we all need a very stiff drink. So On the Rocks, and he was bumped in the Derby coming out of the gate. So I think he has a really good shot.
Absolutely. I want to get to Midnight Bourbon too when we get to picks. And Dan, I want to let you kick off. How people should be approaching this race. As Megan said, if you are a novice bettor or if you're someone who's just dipping your toe into playing, this is a great race. So Dan, I'm hoping you can give everyone kind of some practical tips, what you're following, what you're looking for, and who's appealing to you.
So I think, you look at every race as its own puzzle. So the Derby, that was its own beast, right? Like 20 horses, you're trying to project which horses are going to go to the lead. When we talked last time, I think we all had a pretty good sense that Medina Spirit would go to the lead, but we thought that he might face pressure potentially from some other horses. That never materialized, A, because Medina Spirit was the fastest horse out of the gate, and B, because the other horses who could potentially show speed didn't get out of the gate cleanly. We've mentioned one of them in particular here in Midnight Bourbon. Now, fewer horses in the Preakness, 10 horses, but these are still the same horses. They tend to run back to a certain running style. So Medina Spirit is going to go out to the lead. But you have to figure with fewer horses in this race, Midnight Bourbon, if he gets away cleanly, is likely to be right there with Medina Spirit, keeping him honest early, which he wasn't able to do in the Kentucky Derby. Additionally, to Jason's point about Concert Tour, he's got a lot of speed too. Now, it doesn't make sense for Bob Baffert to have both of his speed horses battling each other in the early stages of the race. So I think you could safely assume that Concert Tour might be just behind those two horses. Now, if those two horses battle each other into submission, it makes sense, or at least begs to reason, that Concert Tour could have a good setup and run on. But there is the red flag of the most recent race, the Arkansas Derby, which was less than impressive when he kind of tired late. So for me, I think the way I'm looking at this is, I think it's not only going to be a pretty honest pace, I think it'll be a contested pace, which we didn't have in the Derby, which is why I actually like Medina Spirit. Now, with the contested pace, I think it sets up for a horse running from well off the pace, but who's also able to save ground. I don't want a horse who's wide, like Concert Tour will be. I want a horse who will be on the rail or near the rail saving ground. And that's actually landed me on a pretty big long shot that I never thought I was going to like in this race. But as I said, each race is its own puzzle. And when I put all the pieces together, the horse I came up with was the 2-horse, Keep Me in Mind. He was a horse that was in the Derby, also did not get away cleanly. But if you watch the replay of the race, like he's done on multiple occasions, he makes a really, really nice late move from off the pace. And he finishes just behind Midnight Bourbon, just by like a head or a neck. And so I think with fewer horses, with less traffic to navigate around late, Keep Me in Mind is going to be a big player, and his price is going to present value in the race, where you know he's going to be at least 10-1, potentially 20-1. I think he's intriguing, and I think that I want to play him. Maybe he's not good enough to get up to win, but I think I'd like to play him win place in the race so that even if he finishes second, I know I'm going to have a nice payday on Saturday.
I think that's a great tip. And for anyone who's looking for a bit of a homer connection, he's trained by Robertino Diodoro, who is a Canadian guy from Calgary. So there's your Canadian connection there. And Dan, before I move on to the third, I wanted to ask you, what does it mean for a horse to bounce? Anyone who's preparing for this race, trying to do a bit of reading, what does that mean in this industry?
It's a good question. I think the way you could look at it, I think in comparing it to another sport, is think of, you know, if the Maple Leafs are playing the Canadians one night, right, and they're really all jazzed up and they turn out with a peak effort and the Leafs win 6-0. The next race, you might figure it's going to be a little bit of a flat performance because they really came with their max effort, and then, you know, they have a little bit of a letdown. I think that's the equivalent. And to put it, you know, in more racing terms, I think when a horse reaches a new career top or a new career number, as Medina Spirit did, which was so much better, that race in the Kentucky Derby was so much better than his prior races. You say, boy, he really raced his heart out in that race. He was all out to win. He faced pressure from 3 horses late. There's an expectation that there may be some regression or a little bit of, you know, a little bit of sort of a setback based on the fact that he tried so hard in winning the Derby. Maybe you see a little bit less than his peak effort.
Yeah, and also with a quick turnaround, that's got to come into play when you're using a term like that. So thank you, Jason. How are you approaching this race, my friend? I know you're doing all sorts of stuff for Woodbine and our social channels, getting us prepped and primed for those that want to play. So how are you approaching this one?
I'm scanning the field. I haven't made my selection 100% concrete. I know I'm leaning in a certain direction as we speak, but like Dan, I go through things. Keep Me in Mind, decent enough effort. Medina Spirit, a lot of pressure. He's not going to be left alone, in my opinion, like he was in the Derby. Crowded trade, just not sure if he's good enough. Midnight Bourbon, yeah, gets out of the gate better. Maybe more of a factor, maybe more of a pace element. Could figure in the mix early, but I'm not sure late. Concert Tour, this guy, he's okay, but, you know, when he won the Rebel, I mean, he beat Caddo River. I'm not really sold on Caddo River. Hosier was second, and he's still just kind of learning things for Baffert. So, you know, you look at the next race in the Arkansas Derby, and he flattened out late to be third. He could bounce back, and maybe Baffert gets the last laugh out of all of this with his other horse, right? So that would be somewhat apropos if that happens. But if there's a lot of speed like Dan and I are thinking, and it percolates, Todd Pletcher has never won this race, ironically enough. And Unbridled Honor is a horse that, okay, I know he couldn't run down King Fury in the slop in the Lexington at Keeneland. I get it, but still a good enough effort. Luis Saez, I mean, big fan of his, 15-1. I know Pletcher had 4 in the Derby and obviously wasn't, a major player in terms of the outcome, but Unbridled Honor, if things get just kind of wacky up front, a little bit too Western, he could be firing his best shot late. So I'm going to take a bit of a price because I'm not really sold on anybody in this race. I really feel like it's absolutely wide open. It could turn out to be a fabulous betting race. So from that standpoint, Brodie, I'm going to try a long shot. 15-1. I'm going to match Dan's price. Just a different horse. I'll go Unbridled Honor from off the pace to surprise, perhaps at a big number.
Guys, I'm loving these picks. This is good. Meghan, you are always looking at the numbers. You are always breaking down the stats. When you take a look at this field, how are you planning to bet this race?
Yeah, I guess for me, and not being in horse racing every day, I like to go with the fun bets. So I would go with the complete Team Chaos trifecta pick, meaning, bet on Bob. So we'll go with Medina Spirit, Concert Tour, and then we'll throw in a Midnight Bourbon. The post 5 that Bourbon's in has had 12 Preakness winners, only post 6 being with the highest amount at 16. And the scouting report for Midnight Bourbon says that he's always around and rarely on top. So I think he's perfect in that trifecta. I think we'll see him show up in a lot of those bets. And yeah, just really excited to see how the world views this race and what actually happens and, what controversy or finality do we have from it with Medina Spirit.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting broadcast to tune into. I'm always curious to see how the journalists and how the broadcasters handle these types of situations. It's like mind-boggling to me. I'm also going with Midnight Bourbon. I don't have a fancy bet picked. I did for the Derby. It didn't work out. I got overwhelmed. I just know that whatever I do, I'm using Midnight Bourbon for the reasons you guys had said. I mean, he really did not get a good trip in the Derby, but like Meghan said, always sort of in the mix, and I like his price. I know he's still up there. It's not like he's a total long shot, but hey, we'll see what happens. Now, for our Derby show, we played a little true or false, and I want to wrap up here with another little true or false. Not as many good food questions, which I was disappointed about for the Preakness. So we're going Triple Crown. I'm going to test your knowledge on that because maybe this is a Triple Crown year. So let's start with this question. The longest gap in Triple Crown winners was 35 years. So between one Triple Crown winner to the next was 35 years. True or false?
I forgot my card, so I'm going to give you a thumbs up.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, you're freaking me out. I have true, but the fact that Dan has false is scaring me. So
wasn't Farrow 30? How long was that? Was that 30?
I have after Triple Crown in 1978. The longest drought in Triple Crown history began in 1979 when Spectacular Bid, didn't have success at the Belmont and lasted until American Pharoah in 2015.
That's what I had, but I guess I'm not good at math. How many years is that?
35. It could be the way that they're doing it. It could be like the year after, or do you know what I'm trying to say? It could be the year.
Yeah. I thought I had 37 years in my mind for some reason. So I don't know. I'll go with your I'm 0 for 1. Jason,
you put this on Twitter and you let us know. If you retweet it with a quote, you tell us what the real fact is. I'm
looking it up.
I'm feeling insecure.
Got an audit.
Well, Jason fact checks for us.
Yes.
No filly has ever won the Triple Crown. True or false? No filly has ever won the Triple Crown.
True.
That is true.
Dan beat me. So yeah, not even the answer.
3 fillies have won the Kentucky Derby. 5 have won the Preakness. 2 have won the Belmont, but none have won a Triple Crown. Okay, the Preakness Stakes is the oldest Triple Crown race. True or false? Preakness is the oldest Triple Crown.
I say yes.
It is false. The Belmont Stakes, which was run at Jerome Park in the Bronx in 1867. The race predates the Preakness, which was first run in 1873, and the Derby, which was first run in 1875. That one surprised me.
It's 37
Okay.
years, by the way.
It is?
Yes.
Oh my God, where did I get my
Yay.
facts? I know where I got my facts from. I'm not going to sell them out.
But we're right, Brodie, just because you're the boss. So if you say
Yeah.
it's 35, it's 35. Sorry, Dan. Sorry, Megan.
Jason
Oh my God.
got that from my blog, so he's reading
Yeah,
from
there
my
you
stuff.
go.
No, I don't roll that way. I roll with facts. I was wrong. Dan is right. My sources were bad. I should have fact checked. Thank you, Jason.
It's all
Let's
good.
finish with this one. 40 horses have won the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown. True or false? 40 horses have won the first 2 legs.
I'm going to go
This is
with
sort of
true.
It's false. 30 horses have won the first 2 legs of the Triple
Way to
Crown.
go, Dan.
Bell to win the Belmont.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, other than I'm stressed that I had a fact wrong,
No.
great, guys.
All good.
If we can, I want to take this briefly into another direction because I want to comment on a horse that Jason brought up, an Unbridled Honor. I really like that horse too, and I think that there is an opportunity this year if you're betting this race, and you want to do something creative, you want to do something different. There's an opportunity to find some long shots. I think Unbridled Honor is one who's very legitimate. So even though Jason told me he's not done with his handicapping yet, and he kind of
I'm done now, Dad. I'm done now.
He's probably just trying to preserve a price for himself on this horse. So I think Unbridled Honor is a legitimate horse if you're looking for long shots. And I think if you want a more realistic horse who's not as big of a price, but who I think should be in the mix, I think number 9, Risk Taking, is another horse to consider. So that's it. I just wanted to be able to blurt all those horses out. And I'm glad that Jason made the case for Unbridled Honor.
Nice.
I love it.
Perfect.
Make sure that you guys tune in to the 146th running of the Preakness Stakes. Tune into TSN 3 at 5 p.m. Eastern. Post time is set for approximately 6:50 Eastern. Also, you can tune in on HPI TV or NBC Sports. This was the best, guys. Thank you so much for joining me and for all your insights on the Preakness. I always have a blast doing this.
Hey, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.